Welcome back. My name's Paul Jellison from iHeartMedia in Dayton and Southern Ohio, and I'm a member of the, what are we calling ourselves? The Ohio Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Conference Planning Committee. Boy. Anyhow, I hope you had a good lunch and had a good time visiting our vendors and exhibitors. Thanks again to TELUS Alliance for that really good lunch. This is our afternoon radio breakout titled Monitoring and Compliance in an Evolving Regulatory Landscape, which will be presented by Paul Stewart, President of Summit Technology Group. Summit Technology Group is a broadcast software manufacturer and consulting firm specializing in regulatory compliance for broadcast and the communications industry. Summit is the broadcast and communication industry's foremost regulatory compliance provider, with software products for compliance logging and recording to compliance inspections, filing, and due diligence services. Paul formerly worked as an application engineer and contributed much to the evolution of automation and playout standards as it pertains to metadata and hardware compatibility. Today, Paul will provide an in-depth look at how radio broadcasters can use logging and reporting tools to ensure legal compliance, satisfy underwriters and advertisers, and improve their station image. Please welcome Paul Stewart.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending the afternoon session with me. Today, I will be discussing regulatory compliance and how logging and monitoring sort of plays into some of the requirements and some of the regulatory needs for radio broadcasters. So. Yep, as Paul mentioned earlier, I'm with Summit Engineering Group, Summit Technology Group, and we provide that sort of that sort of tool for radio broadcasters. So let's first talk about the importance of monitoring and compliance. And typically when we think of regulatory compliance, right, it's not fun, right? It's never the new cool tech. It's more of a, grit your teeth and bear it type of thing. But it's something that we're passionate about, and it's something that stations do need to be mindful of. And I guess the key to understanding, the need for logging and monitoring is that, those types of tools help to reduce lost time. So if you're off the air, if you're a commercial station, you're losing money. If you're a public station or a commercial station, you're losing listeners. You're losing PPM impressions, right? So every minute spent off the air is critical. Alerts of equipment operating out of parameter, right? So that's something that is a requirement, and action needs to be taken within 3 hours, of course, for transmission issues and out of parameter specs with regards to the transmission system. So there is a very clear need for monitoring tools and logging tools when it comes to that type of equipment and the parameters that could be out of parameter. Now, let's talk a little bit about the type of data that can be logged, right? So what is some of the data that we're actually looking for when we're monitoring? What kind of data are we looking for when we're logging? It's going to vary from department to department and station to station. Everybody in this room is going to have a slightly different definition of what they're looking for, what kind of data they're looking for, right? Depends on the type of hardware that you use. It's going to depend on the sorry, it's going to depend on, yeah, the type of hardware that you're using. Sometimes the format of your station is going to determine what kind of data you're looking for. And one of the good sort of rules of thumb that we look at when identifying someone's needs in terms of these types of tools is you want to make sure that you pare down the data to what is very crucial, what is very necessary. When you're looking at a dashboard, right, of parameters, you're looking at a dashboard, or you're looking back through a compliance log, you don't necessarily want to have all the data available to you, all the data of everything that was working properly that day, right? I mean, there's a need to have that data, and then there's a need to sort of present a very clean dashboard for warnings and errors and things that might be right out of parameter. That's what's interesting to whoever's using that log. So again, the data is and sort of to the last point there on this slide. Actually, sorry, hang on just one moment. I think I might have lost the slide, but ultimately, more data is often, it's harmful. It's something where if you're looking through, just sort of an unorganized, sea of data, you're not really getting the important information presented to you in a clean and effective way. So that's where things are missed, right? So the accessibility of the data is also very important, right? We can log all the very, very important parameters of our transmission system, monitor equipment like our STL, but if that data isn't readily available to the engineers, say at the transmitter site, or a contract engineer who might be rarely at the station, maybe they're in and out a couple times a week or month, they want to be able to compile that data, dashboard that data, and have that available to them when they're at home or outside the office. And then, of course, we typically find that with monitoring, you're going to want to include more data, right? So if this is a system that you're sort of doing needs analysis for your station or your group, monitoring is typically going to be more of the raw data, right? And logging is just going to be when something is out of parameter, when there's a warning or an alarm or something of that nature. And then, of course, we put in there some of the possible data sources. This could be as played history, EAS events, transmitter, STL alarms, that type of thing. A few of the best practices that we find to be, a really good way of setting up your system, right? Because everybody's going to be using something a little bit different, and oftentimes, it's a very extensible system, something that you can customize, and everybody in this room is going to have, a slightly different idea of what is important to them. So some of the best practices that we find help when sort of doing a needs analysis for monitoring and compliance systems. The first is mask your PAD, your program-associated data. So what do we mean by that? Basically, what we are looking to provide to our listeners, right, is song title, artist, maybe album, maybe a few other key data points. And that pales in comparison to the number of fields that you likely have in your playout library, right? You might have 50 to 100 fields of data, right? And that could be some of it is valuable to engineering, other to programming, other data is for sales and traffic, so on and so forth. We don't want necessarily that data being pushed out to RDS equipment, right, or to WebStream or other public displays of that pad data. But that is information that might be important for your logger, right? So you want to make sure that you're, taking down, the name of every commercial that plays, every spot, every ID, so on and so forth. If you mask your pad and you have a parallel path from your playout system to your logger and to your RDS middleware, this allows you to sort of have the best of both worlds, right? So you've got two paths from playout, one going to basically that public location, that RDS middleware, and then the other to a private location, so your logger in this case. The next tip here is identify ways of generating reports and printing reports from your logging software. So, chances are, whatever it is you're using, will allow you to customize a report, generate a report, and print that report out. That is a good basis for, reconciling traffic logs. It's a good basis for, proving you aired the PN announcements. We're going into sort of license renewal years. People are going to be playing PN announcements, and that's going to be logging is a great basis to certify that they ran at the prescribed times. And then, like I said, if there's transmitter alarms, STL alarms, things that need to sort of be addressed by engineering, again, that report and that log is going to be crucial in solving those issues. And then finally, provision users for remote access. And with this is something where a lot of folks kind of say, who should be getting access to these files, who should be getting in and changing which parameters, so on and so forth. And it's important to note that you should have certainly administrator accounts to to tweak the preferences and so on and so forth, but then be able to also give your air staff or your sales staff or whomever it is at your station access to the system so they can sit there and maybe they're on their mobile device, their iPad or a desktop computer, and they're able to log in, generate a report, and use that data that they find important, right? So again, that gets back to customizing reports and having those custom reports available for your users, but also being able to enable those users to access that data, at home, at the station, wherever it is they might be. And then a couple of considerations when sort of, either, a lot of times with the logging system, a lot of times we find that stations are sort of doing it themselves, right? So, this sort of applies to those home-built systems, or a off-the-shelf system, but basically trying to find the right amount of data for you, for your users, for any of the folks at your station. And this is the slide that I was referring to earlier. Too much data is worse than too little data. If you're given a report with every parameter, from every piece of equipment in your facility, it's useless. You're not going to find what you're looking for. It's a needle in a haystack. If you're given a pared down version of that, give me the fundamental, more the dashboard summary, type type report, that's where the reports become really effective. Accessibility concerns. Where are my users using this? Where am I using this? Where are my users using this? Am I at the transmitter site and I need to log in and either make a change to the system or generate a report? Am I at the studio site? Am I at home? How do I get in and access this information? Is it available via the web? Is it something where I have to be sitting at a computer on the network? So on and so forth. Notifications of errors and warnings. Again, another personal preference type consideration. How do I want to be notified? If we're using a monitoring software, what level of message do I want to be notified, and how do I want to be notified? Data retention policies and rules. That's more about how long do we keep our files around? How long do we keep our logs and so on and so forth? And being able to set up those rules within the system and be able to have some level of automated housekeeping with regards to those files. For instance, the UK is a country that like many countries actually we're somewhat fortunate to not require logging in the U.S., but most countries do require broadcast facilities to log everything. Their limit, I believe, is 41 or 42 days, and so stations would select a 42-day data retention rule, and that again that can vary. That can be deleted off the system at that point, or moved to some cloud storage or offline storage, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of considerations there that people need to be aware of when building or speccing these systems. The ease of use, that's an obvious one. Making sure that it's something that fits the need of the staff, and methods of recovering from equipment failure. That gets into redundancy of these types of systems, as well as communication between systems on your network, right? So that most of your hardware in your stations at this point probably have some kind of IP connectivity. All of your software likely has commands and communication methods, and that's all consideration when kind of looking at logging and monitoring systems. So again, just to sort of summarize, the need is again here in the U.S. FCC does not require logging, so it's not a not a obligatory need, but it is something that a lot of folks feel that it would benefit their station. It keeps their underwriters, their advertisers happy. It allows them to prove that something did happen or prove that something didn't happen. Some of the other advantages, like I mentioned, keep underwriters and advertisers happy. Keep up with PPM impressions. A couple of minutes of dead air is gonna make your listeners look elsewhere, and reduce downtime. And then again, the considerations is understanding ultimately which users are using the product or the solution, and how are they using it, where are they using it, and identifying those needs before, again, either building a system or reaching out to find a system. You're gonna you should really sort of conduct an internal needs analysis before looking for something, so you kind of know what it is that you want. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending and sort of open the floor up for questions related to monitoring and compliance logging. Anybody have any? Yes.
And some of the technology, do you guys make any software programs for monitoring those?
We do. So we have a monitoring program and a logging program. Yep.
What systems does it work with?
Sure. So the question was, what systems does our program work with? And ultimately it's very open. It's it uses UDP communication. So all the major automation brands, EAS equipment, AOIP brands, pretty much all the AOIP consoles can connect directly to our system, and we can. What's interesting about AOIP connectivity is, we're able to identify when certain faders or certain groups of faders are on and off, and that makes it nice to be able to, put together an air check quickly and easily. Makes it easy for, say, to identify every time the phone fader was on, and be able to quickly and easily either run a report or get that audio in sort of an abridged file. So yeah, so my answer would be, yeah, all the major automation brands, all the major AYP brands.
How do you log? Do you actually have a program that logs audio and things like that, or do you take somebody else's audio?
Yeah, so we log the audio as well. So what Sidecar, our radio logger, will do is record, a stereo, channel of stereo pair of audio, and it will ingest metadata in real time, and it will pair the audio and the metadata. So the end product is, in a web GUI format. You'll be able to go through and search for or filter by various parameters and be able to find exactly the part of the broadcast that you want to download, play, export, whatever it is. So we have it's multi-channel recording and data logging.
Can you, I guess, clarify or explain? You say U.S. does not require logging. I don't know exactly what that means, but we have to log and sign our EAS logs, et cetera. So
Correct.
where does all that fall? What's the difference?
Sure. So the station logs and station records are obviously required here in the States. There's no oral logging requirement. So Canada, for instance, Canadian stations, I don't recall how long they have to keep their logs for, but they actually have to record audio and have also as played logs, to be able to identify French versus English songs, hit versus non-hit. I mean, there's quite a few parameters that they're required to prove with their oral logs, whereas here we have to keep a written log for transmission failures, EAS activations, RMTs, so on and so forth. But there's no requirement to record the program output or off air from a tuner. So for the U.S.
So it's like the audio log.
Exactly right. So that's what's not right. Yeah, to be more specific, that's what's not required here in the States. But again, it's one of those things. It's like a security camera, right? It's there to sort of keep an eye on things, and it's there to help station management either prove something did play, did not play, something was said or was not said, and be able to keep an accurate account of what happened. So we find it really popular among NCE stations. Really like the product. The reason is they like to use it to basically, help their students improve on pretty much review air checks, right, and improve on delivery and sort of monitor to make sure if something's said, they have a copy of it. But again, commercial and public stations, same type of thing. It's the ability is there to quickly and easily export an air check and use that for training purposes, use that for even competitions or award type events, whatever the state broadcast convention submitted for an award or however that works. So, anything else? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and have a good rest of the show.